care, and we think that this is going to be a seat in Washington that will represent us. Any one of the three candidates that ends up going will know by this crowd that we care, and we know that they're going to care, they're going to represent us. So I appreciate that. Can I ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everybody should have I want to thank Herkimer College for helping us with this event. Beautiful venue. Dr. McCulkin. Good. Thank you so much. She is the president of Herkimer College, so thank you. They've always been a partner with the chamber. And then I want to introduce Steve Smith. He is the executive director of Herkimer County IDA. He's going to be a timekeeper. He's going to have a tough job. But do one more thing. I have to introduce our moderator. This is Herkimer County's improved version of Mr. Holt. And he's going to have even a tougher job, but he does a very good job. They are also partners in the chamber, so you don't see how the chamber uses people here. Stephen, I'm going to turn this over to you. Your show, your candidates. I'll just say this. People have asked me about this debate. They said, well, Scott, are you Democrat? Are you Republican? Are you independent? I'm a voter. I hope you guys are voters. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Just some housekeeping rules. You see the exit signs are clearly marked in the back and to your left of the stage right there, just in case we have any issues, but I don't foresee. Although I did MC a debate years ago for, I believe it was for a Oneida County executive, and actually the fire alarm went off. So we're prepared for that. Don't worry about it. Little bit of housekeeping as far as the format for tonight. We're going to have an opening statement from our candidates, followed by a number of questions that were submitted by members of the Chamber of Commerce that each of the candidates will have an opportunity to answer in a 2-minute time frame. That's why we have a timekeeper here. And then there will be 3 minutes for each of the candidates to do closing remarks. So that's how the format is going to go tonight. We are not going to take questions from the audience based on timing. We did solicit for questions probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and again, the chamber members did submit the questions that we are asking tonight. So without further ado, let's introduce our candidates. First, on my far right, representing the Democratic Party of Broome County Legislator, Kim Myers. Kim? Next to Kim is representing the Upstate Jobs Party, Little Falls businessman Mark Babin. And the Republican candidate, 101st District Assemblywoman, Claudia Ten. No problem, John. No problem. It's actually your show, John, so that's fine. In the interest of fairness, because there are some advantages to going first or last or in the middle, we drew names out of a hat to see who would go first for the opening statement and did the same thing for the closing statement. So tonight, we will begin our opening statement portion with Kim Myers. Kim?
Thank you, and I'm going to take it as an advantage to be able to go first, so thank you very much for that. I appreciate everybody coming here. An informed electorate is the best electorate that you can have, so I thank you all for taking the time to come here tonight. My name is Kim Myers, and I'm running for Congress for the New York 22nd, and I couldn't be more humbled and proud for that opportunity. I was born and raised in Broome County, which is down to the south, in Binghamton, New York. I've lived there my whole life. I chose to live there and chose to stay there. I was born and raised in a family business that my dad started with $300 that he borrowed from his grandmother that she literally had stored in her cookie jar. He opened a bait and tackle shop. My 5 siblings and I worked in that business our whole life because that's what we did. And it taught me everything that I am today. It taught me about commitment, It taught me about integrity. It taught me about hard work. And it taught me about giving back to your community and being responsible. Along about the 80s, when my dad's health started to fail, my siblings and I bought that business from my dad when there was only 2 stores. My brother's leadership and his vision and hard work by all of us, it's now grown to be what's known as Dick's Clothing and Sporting Goods, and we have 750 stores across the nation. We employ 37,000 people. I'm going to use the word simultaneously a lot. So I went to Portland State University for a degree in education, came back to work in the business, and, oh geez, I'm not here, okay. And started growing our family. I was a small business owner. We have 6 kids. The oldest is 35, the youngest is 8, and I've been on the Vestal Board of Education for 18 years, 8 of those as president as of last year, and as stated, I'm currently a Boone County legislator and the minority leader. I'm running for Congress because I decided I either had to stop screaming at the television set or I had to do something about it. Thank you.
Claudia Tenney, you're next.
Thank you. I probably don't really need to introduce myself too much to this crowd, but as you know, I live in the State Assembly, the 100th Assembly District. From New Hartford, I grew up in the house across the street from where I live right now. And I'm running for Congress because there's 3 main issues that I want to talk about. First is the economy. As a small business owner, my family business was started in 1946. It's a New York corporation. 7 years later today, we are still a New York corporation, paying New York corporate taxes and all taxes that we put in this community. So taxes and regulations are a huge issue for the economy, and so is trade. And it's an issue that I
Your mic is not on or something. Claudia, we can't hear you. Just go loud.
Oh, okay. How's that? Thank you. Yeah, so, okay. Thank you. Sorry, Larry. The second issue I think is really important to our communities is security, and that has to deal with our borders and what's happening within our borders. And the biggest, and I think one of the more important issues, is corruption. And as a member of the State Assembly, I've been able to witness firsthand, watching members of this State Assembly and the Senate literally marched out in handcuffs because of the corruption in Albany. And it's something I've been fighting, and as the first person, elected official, or anyone I know to call for the resignation of corrupt Speaker Sheldon Silver back in 2012, that was years before Preet Bharara got to him. I've been willing to stand up to corruption. I've called out members in both parties, and I think it's something that we need to deal with, not just in Albany, because we have the same type of corruption and the same type of cronyism in D.C. And I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to take that fight to D.C. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running for Congress.
Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. For me, this is really special to be at my alma mater, Herkimer County Community College. We appreciate hosting this event, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, and for WKTV and getting the word out. Actually have this turnout, but most of all, the audience here. Thank you for taking time out what these candidates have to offer. For me, I'm running for Congress for one reason. That is that I believe we wave goodbye to too many of our children as they move away from upstate New York. In search of opportunities, they don't find enough like here, and I think we can change that. My background, as many of you know, I grew up in Little Falls, just 5 miles away from here, and after going to school there, here at Herkimer, moved down to met my wife, Krista, who's in the front row. We've been married 36 years, and we traveled around the world together as we AV Exchanges, which operates the post exchanges and retail stores. Then had the opportunity with the last assignment with AV Exchanges, being in Silicon Valley, where I started a company that has grown, a large company listed on New York Stock Exchange, helping small businesses with all of their headaches of being. So the reason I'm running for Congress is over these last 6 years, after I moved my family from Silicon Valley back to Little Falls, I've been very involved in helping the next generation start companies, because that's my belief is the best way for us to create jobs. Jobs are not created by the government, they're created by entrepreneurs. I want to serve my country give back for all that I've been fortunate to receive. Quite frankly, I'm frustrated with the bickering that goes on between the two major parties, and there's much that I can do as an independent in bringing the parties closer together so that we can get some more things done in Washington.
All right, thank you, candidates. Time now for our first question, and this will be posed to Kim Myers, followed by Mr. Babinick, and then Claudia Tenney. The question: if you win, you will be a freshman congressional representative. While each of you have stated that you're not Washington insiders, how much influence do you believe you will have on effectively legislating for the good of the 22nd District? Won't some alliances be necessary to get work accomplished?
Thank you for that. And that is a good question. As someone who has never done this before, been in Congress, I think that that's an advantage because I don't have anything to, I'm not beholden to anybody, and you go to Congress with the right idea in mind. And my idea is that I was elected by the 22nd District, that's who I would serve, and that's who I would be beholden to. I understand that they're told me that you have to kowtow to this or you have to do that. I really believe that the electorate is fed up and is, as shown by the number of you that are here today, that people want change and they want to elect people who are not going to do that. They're not going to be beholden to a particular party or to a particular ideology. That's what I plan on doing when I go to Congress, and I am convinced that there are many people throughout the country, just like myself, that are being elected, that will go to Congress and will go to the table and say, I really don't care if it's a Republican idea or if it's a Democratic idea. If it's a good idea, get to the table and hammer this out, because I think the message has been sent. If you don't, you're going to be unelected. I'm not there to stay for forever, and I know that there are people that have been there for a very long time. Some of them will be unelected. Those that are there and have their career there, I think the writing is on the wall for them as well. I think that they will see we have to work together, or you're going to be back home and somebody else is going to be taking your place. So that's what I intend to do. I'm not beholden to anybody. I've exampled as far as a legislator and as a school board member how I can think for myself. I look at all the ideas, I look at all the consequences, and I look at it from all sides before I make a decision. And the decision is always what's in the best interest of the people that you serve. Thank you.
Mr. Babbitt.
Alliances are necessary to get things done in policy. And policy means not just the votes that are cast and legislation that someone might try to sponsor. I would say that the role of a congressperson is actually more than just policy. The other two pillars that I would think are very important include constituent service. Having a congressman that understands the needs of both individuals and of businesses who sometimes have to navigate through this maze of federal bureaucracy, providing good constituent service is something that is critically important for the congressional role. But the third pillar is leadership. And leadership to me means getting things done. No matter what party you're in, and especially for me as an independent, I have that opportunity to forge alliances with whoever is going to help me bring about the change that I believe needs to be done, not only through policy, but right here in the district. As a leader who has brought people together with especially helping that next generation of entrepreneurs in the newer industries right here, there are many opportunities to put leadership in work. With the role of congressman, I would have the opportunity to convene our colleges, our economic development organizations, our business community. There are a lot of resources here that have the right intent, but don't have a convening force that brings them together to solve these issues around creating jobs. That's what I know how to do. That's what I've been doing for the last 6 years with my nonprofit, Upstate Venture Connect, and that's what I will do for you as Congressman.
Assemblywoman Tenney.
Thank you. I think the key word is, I always hear about, we need to have someone go to Congress who's going to be there a long time so they can log in seniority and get something, so they can get things done. I haven't been really impressed with what Congress has been getting done so far, but I think leadership means something else. I think leadership means standing up for the So actually working with the other people on the other side of the aisle to get legislation passed that isn't going to force us to compromise our beliefs. As someone who's worked in the state assembly with a makeup 107 to 42, that's 107 Democrats to 42. Those aren't good odds. But nonetheless, in the last 6 years in the state assembly, I've been fighting corruption, but I've also managed to get over 60 pieces of legislation passed. Some are more substantive than others, and I've sponsored numerous other bills that have become law. This is because we have to do that in the assembly, but we have to make common sense, and we also have to stand up for things that aren't right. And it's something I've not been afraid to do, and it's something I've done as a business person. As many of you may or may not know, my family owned the Penny Saver for many years here. We also own the New York Press, which has been around for 70 years. Our business has been suffering under many burdensome regulations. One of them is Obamacare. It's hurt us and devastated our small business community. Many of our family farms have been devastated. So that's the kind of thing that we need to stand up as for our constituents. And as someone who is the quintessential outsider, as someone who has faced competition from both parties in the establishment in every race I've ever won for the state assembly, and who has been redistricted into the longest assembly district in the history of New York State, which was calculated to eliminate me. I'm still here because the constituents know that my mission is to tell the truth and to lead us out of the mess that we're in with this federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, we'll start with Mr. Babinett. Multiple mass shootings across the country this year, even as recently as this past weekend, the Second Amendment is coming under fire. Where do you draw the balance between the right to bear arms for responsible citizens, the limiting of access to guns and ammunition to irresponsible citizens, and would you be prepared to make a decision that may enhance the safety of Americans yet not be favorable to this county's largest employer? Mr. Babinett.
Second Amendment is something that I am absolutely 100% committed to. And anytime we start looking at changes that affect what even the Supreme Court has determined in the Heller decision, that every individual in this country is entitled to own a firearm, that is something that I will not compromise on. Now, are there things that can be done to avoid having firearms fall into hands of people who are criminals? Those are things that can be looked at, and each individual piece of legislation will have to be looked at on its face. But in general, I am 100% committed to the Second Amendment, as well as the opportunity to support Remington Arms, which is this district's largest employer, at least Herkimer County's largest employer, one that has been a fabric of our community for multiple generations. It is a shame that the SAFE Act has pushed Remington Arms in a direction that is a situation that is very untenable for them as a company, and anything we can do to keep those jobs and Remington Arms here is something I'm equally committed to and would fight for as your congressman.
Assemblywoman Tenney, you're next.
Thank you. It is one thing to talk about supporting the Second Amendment. It's another thing to have a record of fighting to protect our Second Amendment rights. As a member of the State Assembly, I was delighted to bring over 75 Remington Arms employees to the Capitol on Monday, the day that the Senate started passing it. We fought hard, we split up into groups, and we tried to figure out which legislators would vote yes. Sadly, that legislation was rushed through by a governor who is just as unlawful as our president, who felt they need to take a shot at our Second Amendment rights. I support the Second Amendment. I have A rating from NRA. I'm endorsed in this race by NRA, New York State Rifle and Pistol, and every other major gun group. I support our responsible gun owners. I do not think many of the legislation that has come through that is trying to restrict Second Amendment rights is reasonable in many ways. I'm not against keeping guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them, but our biggest problem in this country is illegal gun ownership. And it's the failure of many prosecutors to go in and not prosecute gun crimes. That's the first thing that gets negotiated. But I know that we have a prosecutor who's in our county right now who does prosecute gun crimes, and that's important. And there are many ways to look at the Second Amendment as people think that it's, for example, our president feels that we need to control guns, and so does Hillary Clinton. I just don't support those views. I think that we need to continue to stand for our Second Amendment. And not only, one other thing I want to say is, the SAFE Act, by the way, I'm the first person to introduce full repeal legislation of the SAFE Act. I will sponsor anything that will chip away at the illegal aspects of the SAFE Act. But one thing that's really important about it is the SAFE Act isn't the only reason that our small business community and businesses like Remington Arms are threatened. It's because of we are one of the most unfriendly business environments in the entire nation here in New York State. It's regulations, it's the forcing through of bills like microstamping that have hurt it could potentially hurt Remington Arms, that are going to hurt this community. Regulations and taxes are the biggest reason they're chasing our businesses out of here, along with bad trade deals. Thank you.
Myers?
Thank you. I couldn't agree more that the Second Amendment, needs to be protected. As somebody who grew up in a family business that is probably currently the largest seller of guns and ammunition, I know what responsible gun ownership is. I've lived it my whole life long. We've sold them, and we have friends who were customers, lifelong customers. I know what responsible gun ownership is. Recent shootings are becoming all too familiar. We're almost getting desensitized to them. And as my colleagues have said, nobody talks about that the Supreme Court has already ruled on the Second Amendment. It is the Heller decision that says, yes, you do have the right to bear arms. I don't really think that I've heard anybody say that they're seriously considering repealing the Second Amendment, and I would oppose that vehemently. But yes, Remington Arms is the largest employer in this area, and I am very, very intimately familiar with that yellow and green box. During hunting season in our business, I sold many of those, and truth be told, sometimes when the competition was, we had a price war, my father would grab cash out of the cash register and send us kids over to buy all the shotgun shells up in a competitor. But it was a sight to see a 15 or 16-year-old. Laws were different back then, walking out of a competitor with a whole case under your arm. But again, we need to look at what we are doing in this country. It doesn't make any sense for somebody who's on the no-fly list for terrorist activity to be able to buy a gun. It doesn't make any sense for somebody that's criminally, mentally ill to be able to buy a gun. And universal background checks are applauded and even endorsed by most of our citizens. My neighbor across the street's name is Marty. He is the biggest NRA member that you will ever see. When I told him I was running for Congress, he said, I said, Marty, I need your support. And he said, honey, I love you, but next to my wife and my children, the most important thing to me is that Second Amendment. And I said, let's talk about it. He came over, we talked about it. He's one of my biggest supporters. Thank you.